We are still in the theme of Purim, and we are going on continuing the lessons that we derive from the entire story with Purim. And last week we were learning this amazing sikha of the Rebbe, where the Rebbe analyzes this metaphor, this mashal that the Chazal say concerning the Achashverosh and Haman being two types of anti-Semites. One anti-Semite that believes that Jews are just a middle of the way, the whole entire world is his, it's Sadehu, and the Jews are just like a mound in the middle of his field. Haman is a type of anti-Semite that his entire situation is such that he has an emptiness within, and he finds that this emptiness disturbs him, and he wants to do away with the cause of his feeling of emptiness, which is the Jews. And both of them have a common commonality. Achashverosh and Haman. Achashverosh is an anti-Semite in his own right, and Haman is an anti-Semite in his own right. And we said that the way to deal with these type of people and these type of governments is we need to follow the instructions of Mordechai. We need to follow the instructions of Sanhedrin, which means to, on the one hand, do whatever we can in the and following the rules of nature, while at the same time that while we're following the rules of nature, we have to precede that following the rules of nature with saying Tehillim, and then after we are successful and after we have done what we have to do based on the rules of nature, so then we have to say a Perek Tehillim afterwards in thanks. And we contrasted that with Bar Kochba. Bar Kochba, who took on the Roman army, said that Hashem, don't help them and don't help us. In other words, we can rely on nature because he had a very powerful army and he trained them very well and he knew what type of strengths he had. So the Rebbe is going to address that how that is an incorrect approach, because Jews have to completely realize and be in constant connection and awareness of their connection with Hashem and not rely on nature. And they have to constantly realize that through the vehicle of nature do Hashem's brachas come down. So we are holding on Ois Chav Daled on page 39 of the printout. The explanation this is seemingly Bar Kochba has a complaint. He has some validity for what he's saying. After Bar Kochba tested the might and the strength of his armies and his troops, like it's related by Chazal, what he did to be able to ensure that he only had the best soldiers. He came to the conclusion that also by the rules of nature, without Chas v'Shalom and assistance of Hashem, he's able to take on the wicked kingdom of Rome. So therefore, what was wrong? He realized and he followed the rules of nature. But the response to this is all matters of calculations and logic and following nature applies only when we talk about a nation that has connection with nature. But the Jewish people, what type of connection do they even have with nature? Since they are part of Hashem above in actuality. You are children of Hashem, your God. So since we are children of Hashem, so just like the Father, which is Hashem, is completely beyond nature, so too the children have no connection with nature, meaning that Yidden are beyond nature, and therefore our main thing has to be our connection with Hashem. And we do the natural things just as a side thing because Hashem commanded us to do it, not because we must do it. Not because that is what ensures. It's because Hashem asked us to do this. I'm reminded of the story. This is the Purim. I told this over in many places. The famous story about the hurrah with the Purim Farbrengen of 1953. But I'm just going to bring a small point over there that there was a chassid of the Rebbe Rashab, that the Rebbe Rashab said when the Russian government, when the Tsar fell and they first initially had elections before the communists took over, he told the chassidim to go vote in the election. And there was one chassid over there that had no idea about what you're supposed to do. So he just followed the crowd and he did whatever the other chassidim told him to do. But since this was something that the Rebbe told him to do, so therefore he first went to the mikveh as a preparation, and then he put on his gartel because he's doing a command that the Rebbe told him to do. So in a similar way, our attitude towards nature has to be, this is what Hashem told us to do. It's not that we're doing it because the nature is what's giving us the parnasa, or the nature is what's helping us overcome the antisemites, or these governments are going to be the ones to protect us. No, we have to always be realizing and aware that it's Hashem working through them, and we're just using the rules of nature because we are told to do so. Let's skip over 2 paragraphs to the second paragraph from the bottom. Like we see, according to what occurred when the Yidden left Mitzrayim. Though there were 600,000 military age people, the Torah calls them military, 600,000 men from the ages of 20 to 60. And who was at the head of that military? Moshe Rabbeinu Barosham. Moshe Rabbeinu was leading. He was their commander in chief. And they went up, the Jewish people went up from Mitzrayim, chamushim. So one of the explanations of the word chamushim means armed. And why specifically the word chamushim? So the Rebbe is going to bring, Kodisa Birashalmi, that the word chamushim is related to the Hebrew word chamisha, meaning 5. This teaches us the word chamushim, that they were armed with 5, or he says 15 maybe different types of weapons. So in other words, you had 6 powerful military, the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, with weapons. Therefore, they had nothing but to get excited about, and they had nothing but to fear from some type of Amalek. But we know, what does it say in the pasuk immediately before Amalek attacked? In the Kasha B'nai Yisrael, Amru Hayesh Hashem B'kirbeinu im Ayin, when the Yidden doubted and said, is there Hashem amongst us or not? Azai miyad Yavei Amalek. Immediately afterwards, the Torah says Amalek came. V'oisei Amalek Yochid Uktantan, that small singular Amalek, Garim Tzaris L'Shishim Ribi B'nai Yisrael. He caused problems for 600,000 Yidden. And over there, Rashi gives a mashal of a father that was carrying his child on his shoulders, and whatever the child wanted, he handed him. He wanted a fruit, he picked the fruit for him and gave him. He wanted something else, he gave it to him. And then all of a sudden, they met a stranger on the road, and the child asked, did you see my father? The father got obviously very upset, and he put him on the ground, and then a dog attacked him, and so on. In other words, the very doubts and the very questioning or the very dismissing of Hashem within us invites the trouble. And the awareness of Hashem within us is our protection. How could that be? How is it possible that according to the rules of nature, when you have 600,000 armed Yidden, military strength 600,000, and still in all, the small Amalek, like the Rebbe calls them, could attack them? Like you see in the war between 2 sides. When the war is running logically, so then the strong will defeat the weak. But if one of the sides is fighting and without following the rules, what does it mean he doesn't follow the rules? By him, it's something that matters for his entire being. And by the other one who he's fighting, it's only that he's doing so logically. The ideal example is what's going on now with Russia and Ukraine. No question about it. Everybody thinks, Russia has the more powerful army and the stronger military, and yet the small minor country is able to stand against them. Why? Because Ukraine is fighting for their very existence, fighting for their very lives, fighting for something that truly matters for them, whereas Russia, their invasion is just because it makes sense to defeat them. But when one is fighting with something that matters to their very being, so then the weak can defeat the strong. Though he is strong, he will be weak and lazy. And the weak fights with his very essence of his soul to be victorious by seeing in this victory the whole purpose of his life. And in this case, in the metaphor in our case is that Amalek sees the entire purpose of his life to attack the Jewish people. The anti-Semite, the Haman, the Achashverosh sees the entire purpose and the justification for their existence, and to be able to justify the emptiness that they feel within them is only if they defeat the Jewish people. So therefore, even though the Yidden might be stronger than Amalek, and there's 600,000 armed individuals, an army of 600,000 men, still in all, Amalek could make tzaras. Now, going back to the original idea about what's the problem with the anti-Semitism, what's causing it. What is talking the reason that every Yid, every goy, come on, without exception, cannot stand the Yid, therefore he cannot do a kindness for a Yid, at the kindness of the nations of the sin. Because by goyim there's two types of states. One state is one was one had a mound in his field, a protrusion. It just stands in his way. The very fact that there's an existence of a Yid in the world, it's by the persons, by the guy, like a mound. It's a protrusion. It stands in his way with mineral's field. It doesn't even interest him what is the makeup of that mound. Does it have anything special about it? Even if it's a mound of gold or silver, if it's only earth, but it's just in the way. I don't care. Gold, silver, it's just in my way. Rather, there's something that occupies space, that has importance except for him. Wherever in the world that he thinks it's his, Sadehu, it's his field. That's the way the guy looks at the world, that the world is his place. Since it's his field, what is the existence of a Jew doing over there? Jews are alien creatures. They don't belong wherever they are. Wherever you find a Yid, a guy is trying to say, you don't belong here. Like the Medrash said concerning Yaakov and Esav, Esav complains to Yaakov, what are you doing in this world? It seems to be that Esav was bothered that Yitzchak gave the brachas to Yaakov, but that's not at the core what bothered Esav. At the core, what bothered Esav, the very existence of a Yid is considered by Esav, is considered by the anti-Semite as a mound in his field. It's not even because that mound interferes with his comfort. The only thing is, this is his field. The world is mine. A Yid doesn't belong in this world. And in that world is found a mound that is something foreign. The Rabbi Manas Friedman says, I don't remember if I mentioned it last year, that the world hates the alien. whether it's an alien from outside the country, someone that crossed the border, or it's an alien from outer space. Someone that's an alien, someone that's not there, they want to send back. The world looks at a Yid as alien. We're alien creatures, and it's taka that way. We're taka from out of this world. We are taka, a godly creature that really does not really fit into the world. So they want to assist us, chas v'sholem, in leaving this world. Balzeh ein shum eitzah. Concerning this type of attitude of a guy, there's no real way of getting around it. There's no real way of convincing the guy. Even if a Yid will give up all of his matters, and he'll give away the guy all of his wealth, and he will become his servant, totally given over, a complete servant. And he calls Mashli his Batlam and Mitzuyusay, as long as the Yid does not cease existing, by Yehudim La'abdam, like it says. The very existence of a Yid pokes at the eyes of a guy. Even if a Yid thinks that if he removes his tefillin, he'll open his store on Shabbos, and he'll close it on Sundays. He'll speak the language of the guy. He will dress and he will act like the kamoisai, like the guy. He will act like and he will derive pleasure and benefit from the meal of that Rasha. Then he believes, all the boundaries are down, all the limitations are gone. So then the guy will be his friend. That's not the truth. As long as the existence of a Yid exists, a guy will not be calm. And we'll talk about what's the advice then to do it. If all of these things don't work, what is the proper advice? The proper advice is the connection with Hashem. And to another was a groove and a furrow in his field. This is an amazing psychological analysis of anti-Semitism that the Rebbe gives. That there's another type of guy that feels that he has an emptiness within him. Like the Chazal say concerning Har Sinai, that when the Torah descended, the hatred from the nations descended upon it as well. Sinai and Sinah sound similar, even though it's not spelled at all the same. Why is there a hatred? As HaTorah, because the Goyim did not accept the Torah. From when the Jewish people accepted the Torah, which is the Torah of life, and therefore, who doesn't want life and everything that life entails? The guy feels he feels an emptiness within him. It's an amazing, again, psychological analysis of the anti-Semite, that he just feels empty inside. He feels that there's something that the Yid has that he's missing. The studies of Rahman al-Islam Nazi documents showed that even though the party line was how low the Jewish people was, and so on and so forth, but the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, had also a totally different view. They believed that the Jewish people were all powerful and very and amazing, and because of that, since the German folk had to be the greatest, they couldn't allow for the Jewish people to exist. This emptiness could have been solved. They had the choice. They were given the opportunity to accept the Torah. But the Goyim did not want this. Hashem shopped around the Torah. Hashem was a salesperson, was going from door to door salesperson to every nation and every language, and he offered them the Torah, and they didn't accept it. Aval. So if they didn't accept it, so why now do they feel an emptiness inside? It says aval became still in all masha einam writes in the fact that they do not want the Torah. They did not want the so-called limitations of the Torah, what the Torah tells them not to do. But the good of the Torah, that they do want now. The Kiva Shekain, since that's the case, in a whatever a Jew will do, Kiva Yisrael, since he is a Yid, skip the brackets, 3 lines down or 2 lines down, in a kol goy shepogish boy. Any guy that meets him doesn't make a difference. The Yid represents Torah, and the Yid is associated with Torah. As far as the Yid wants to distance himself from Torah, the Yid reminds the guy about the emptiness that he has. He feels the guy that he has an empty space inside. He has this choritz. The guy has a choice. He can prevent that feeling of emptiness through ascending and elevating himself to a higher state than the way he is now. He can observe the Shem Misnei Noach. He can associate with Yidden in a positive way and learn from them and so on. But the guy negates this immediately. From the beginning, he doesn't even consider it. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want to fulfill the command that says do not murder. And he even has a reason why he doesn't want to observe this mitzvah. He wants to follow the directive of his father. Kibudav, he has Kibud Avaim. He honors and respects his wishes of his father. Yitzchak told Esav, "You will live by your sword." Therefore, he says, "I cannot accept what the Torah says not to murder." This already took place by Matan Torah, like we spoke about before. Like it's told over in the Midrashim, when Hashem turned to the children of Esau, the children of Ishmael, and they were given the possibility to accept the Torah. The guy asked, "What is it written in it?" They said, "It says, do not murder." So one did not want to accept it because it says not to murder. It says, you should not practice adultery. Another one didn't want to accept it. It says do not steal. A third nation did not want to accept it. Therefore, this anti-Semite has another approach. So he has another approach to prevent this feeling of emptiness. That also for me and also for you won't be like the story with Shlomo Melech and the 2 women that came, and the woman who was not a mother, since she was jealous of the woman whose baby survived, she was willing to have the living baby die, because if I don't have, you shouldn't have. The entire idea of an emptiness. When is it applicable? If someone has a positive thing, has something that is good, and the person himself is lacking it, so then you could feel empty. But if the Yidden would be destroyed, since the idea of the existence of Torah in the world will cease, since the Torah will return to its place, skip the brackets, the world will remain without Torah, heaven forbid. So then no emptiness will be felt. You won't be lacking anything. Since each one does not have anything specific. And these 2 types, skip the parentheses, are really associated and connected one to another. The reason why the existence of a Yid in the eyes of a guy looks just like a protrusion, a mound that's just standing in the middle of the way. It's because he feels empty. So that's why, because he feels empty, so a Yid, wherever he is, he just in the middle of the way. In truth, it's really one thing. They're 2 sides of the same coin. From the perspective of the body, the guy cries out, "I can't stand the existence of the body of a Yid." Even Shazel Tail Basachsadeu, it's a mound in his field. Mitzad Neshama, from the perspective of Neshama, Shichel Kol Kamem Al Mamish, it's a part of Hashem above. V'Lachem Vayed Hashem Al Har Sinai Vaydaber Al Kim Eskol Dvarim Ha'elu Leimer. For this reason, Hashem descended on Har Sinai, and He spoke all these words. Ad Seif Al Kol Adoidus. It says Leimer. So the Chazal say, why does it say Leimer? Till the end of all time. So therefore, it becomes by him an empty space. It becomes by him a furrow. So now the Rebbe says, now the Rebbe is going to teach us the lesson how to look beyond the facade. Much of the shir takes place in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles, we know all about facades. We all know about things that look external and Hollywood and so on, and there's nothing. There's no there beyond the facade. So the Rebbe wants us now with this whole sikha. Why is he teaching us about anti-Semitism? Because the Rebbe wants us to look beyond the externals and not to think that if you tweak this thing and you move this thing around, everything will work. No, we need to connect to Hashem. That's the first thing. That's the point that he's going to explain right now. This is the content of the words of the Gemara. What is it likened to? This case of Achashverosh and Haman, to two people. One had a mound in his field. And another had a groove and a furrow in his field. And we want to understand and to think into the whole entire relating the entire story of Achashverosh and Haman. We could think, and the Rebbe is going to give all types of possibilities of things that we could blame it on. And we could say it was this thing, it was that thing. You know why it happened? Haman got angry and jealous of Mordechai. Therefore, he wanted to bribe Achashverosh for 10,000 talents of silver. Since Achashverosh was a fool, he agreed to it. He was too stupid to realize that the economic downturn that will happen from getting rid of the Eden will cost him much, much more than the 10,000 silver talents. So this means like this. One could think that if any of these details would have not come into play, so the whole story with Haman and Achashverosh would never happen. If Achashverosh would have been smarter, so then he wouldn't have listened to Haman. That's what we might think. Or perhaps if somebody would have tried to bribe Achashverosh with a greater amount to protect the Yidden. Not 10,000, but 11,000. So too we can think. How about if Haman was not such a fabisana, like they say in Yiddish? Wouldn't have been such a Rasha. He would have minded maybe that the Yidden were around, and he would have minded that Mordechai didn't bow down, but he wouldn't have been so evil and so terrible that he wants to destroy the Jewish people. Or maybe or perhaps if someone would have made him drunk a day beforehand, instead of getting drunk by the meal with Esther, he would have gotten drunk before he approached Achashverosh. And therefore, a person that's drunk doesn't necessarily take to heart everything that goes wrong. And therefore, he wouldn't have been so upset that Mordechai did not kneel, not bow down. Or another situation that could have happened. If Mordechai would have not have angered Haman, so then skip the parentheses to the last line of this paragraph. So then the entire decree would have never happened. That's what we could have thought. So that, to be able to disabuse us of that notion, to be able to remove that idea from our mind, that we shouldn't think that was just a quirk of circumstances. It just happened to be that this, that, or the other took place, and that's why the decree took place. No. Therefore, the Gemara negates this approach and this view. By Meres, and the Gemara says, it's a mistake. The fact that Achashverosh was a fool, and the fact that Mordechai didn't bow down, the fact that Haman got angry, etc., etc. All these things are garments in nature. But if you remove the externalities, you could drill down to the core. But we want to know the true matter. In the analogy, the metaphor of Achashverosh and Haman was it likened to the Gemara says, to do people. One had a mountain in his field, and another had a furrow in his field. Achashverosh had a mountain in his field. That's the very existence of the Eden that were in his countries under his control, that their very existence did not give him any rest. He couldn't stand the fact that the Eden were around. And Haman had this furrow in his field. Haman Yadash B'nai Yisrael, Haman knew that Yidden are one nation scattered amongst the nations, and their laws are different from every nation. What's important over here about the laws? Because that's what really got to Haman. That's stuck in his craw. What bothered Haman is that they received on Har Sinai an everlasting Torah from the one Hashem that He is everlasting. The ilu etzloi, as opposed to him, ain't calling Yonamelu. He does not have this everlasting law and this everlasting Torah that's connected with the everlasting Hashem. And 1,000 years are up. What he stands for will not be ever remembered. Therefore, he has an emptiness in him. He has a furrow. So therefore, Haman told Achashverosh, it's not worthwhile for the king to let him stay around. What do you need such an existence that will always bother you? And I will always feel an emptiness because there's someone that has a completely different state than my own. So the Gemara says, yes, so the Gemara says we have a good business deal. With the owner of the mound and the owner of the chritz. Baal Daik. Specifically, we call them Baal. Baal is an owner. Everyone, each one of them can see, thinks they're in control. It's theirs to do with as they please. The one who owns the mound does not accept the very existence of a Yidden in the world as something natural. He thinks they don't belong here. As the ganzen balabas, he thinks he is the one that's in control. He thinks he's the owner over here, and the only thing that's interfering with his balabatishkeit, with his ownership, is this mound in the middle of his way. So too, the one who has this emptiness inside him doesn't think it's his fault. Who balabas? Still in all, he has this furrow, and he's got to find some type of advice, some type of thing, some type of plan to deal with this emptiness that he feels inside of him. Since he doesn't want to accept upon himself the commands of not to murder, not to steal, he has an easier way how to deal with it by to destroy the Yidden. So what is the advice? How do we deal with this? The Rebbe says, since they are the ones that are seemingly in control, so what's the advice for it? It says in the footnote that the Rebbe like smiled and he said to get the guy drunk is not going to help because, like we said before, even getting Haman drunk and therefore won't bother him about Mordechai. Eventually, another guy is going to take his place. And not only that, even being drunk, he can do the same thing. So he says like this. Seemingly, what's going to help to go to Achashverosh and to try to convince him that he should stop the decree. We just now explained that this metaphor of a mount concerning Achashverosh, he was also an anti-Semite. He also hated the Yidden. He himself wanted to get rid of the Yidden. What's going to help to put in effort by Achashverosh? So for this, the Rebbe emphasizes, first, before going to Achashverosh, what is really going to stop the Gzeira? Our connection with Hashem. Like we said, Ubiracha Hashem Elokecha is the first thing, and then B'chol Asher Tasa. Or like we learned last week, Im Hashem lo yishmar ir. First there has to be Hashem guarding the city, then you can hire guards. Therefore, Bitul Agzeira Haya. How was the decree of Haman nullified? It wasn't through Esther. It was through Mordechai decreeing a fast. And he collected and gathered 22,000 children of yeshiva that studied Torah and Daven. Also Shavasam, until the cry arose, and he heard the sound of the crying. God, a great sound, like kid goats and like lambs. Not like Baruch Hu, then Hashem took those letters that was decreed upon them, that they were sealed with the seal of the pottery seal, and he tore them super medrash, like a medrash relates. The noise of Lazar. Now, this is in addition to this, once you had the core connection with Hashem, now, in addition to that, you need to also have the externals. Even since there's a need to do things in the natural means, once you have already assured the first part, once you already have Hashem's bracha, that Hashem is giving you the bracha, now you do things in nature, in everything you do. Esther, Lilbush, Malchus, Esther has to dress up in royal garb, and to go speak with Achashverosh, the owner of the mount, and to set up a party. Through that, you made it says it got the king angry, got the ministers angry, until even by nature the decree was nullified. And here he's going to bring a concept that we've learned before and discussed before, and the Rebbe discusses in different places, about the very paradox in Esther's approach to Achashverosh, and the reason why there was such a paradoxical approach was because it was emphasizing, like a sikha that we learned, what was it, like I think 2 weeks ago, that was essentially about a supernatural type of removal of the decree, not the natural. The Indians there, this is emphasized, how it's primarily the godly intervention that undid the decree. Is emphasized in the way Esther acted. Seemingly, when Esther needs to find favor in the eyes of Achashverosh, to such a degree that despite the fact that Esther said, I was not called to come to the king already 30 days, despite that, the king should extend to her the golden scepter. So logically, what should have been is, first and foremost, beauty parlor, the Rebbe says in English. She should have gone to a beauty parlor, with slabish, with yapis, to get all dressed up and to beautify herself, etc. The loss is kol mashetzarich, the loss is chen v'chesed, to do everything that you need to do to find favor in Achashverosh's eyes, because you do not rely on a miracle. Ma asa Esther, what did Esther do? She sent a call to an old rabbi. What does an old rabbi know about the beauty parlor? Instead, she told him, since we need to do something in nature, so I will go into the king. But before that, go gather all the Yidden and fast on my behalf for 3 days. And she didn't just say, let them fast, but I'm going to go to the beauty parlor. It's not just enough that you yourself should fast. It's not that's not a kunz, it's not a trick, but all the Yidden, from their heads to their ends, Gama Yiladim, even the children, the Gama Ni, and also I, that I need to have, and I need to find favor before Achashverosh. So I'm also going to fast. What am I going to do? I will concern myself about how to find favor before I have to go into the king. I'm not going to worry about it now. But the beginning of the action, also I and my maidservants or my maidens will also fast as well. Meaning, again, this constant approach. My approach needs to be first and foremost is my connection with Hashem. Then I look for an external type of derech hateva, some type of way in nature how I do it. But the main thing is the connection with Hashem. And so I will come to the king, not according to the rules of entry to the king, like the Megillah relates. I will go out of self-sacrifice. In other words, she's saying I'm risking my life in going into the king. Because I will go on the foundation of my connection with Hashem, that I will go with the power of your fasting and my fasting. Therefore, I'm confident and I have betachon and trust that I will be successful. And then the Gamim Lav, she didn't totally rule out another possibility. Even if I won't make it, Ein's a negeya. It doesn't matter. Sheken Yehudi tzadich lasis mashemut lalo al pitoida, because a Yid must do what it's incumbent upon him according to Torah. V'atzlacha tluya b'birchas Hashem, and the success is dependent upon the bracha of Hashem. V'zoi habechina b'negeya la'alichas Esther al Melech, and like we said earlier, this is the litmus test. This is how you know if the approach of Esther to the king is appropriate. Is the way how she's approaching the king is because she relies on my power and the might of my hand? Or is it because that I'm doing the command of Mordechai Esther is doing? So if the preparation for going to the king is in such a manner that also I and my maidservants or my maidens will also fast, so then we know that the statement of Mordechai Esther will be doing. She is fulfilling it in the way that Mordechai wants it to be done. He is doing so in a way of a connection to Hashem. Then she is successful to make the vessel, the vehicle, and the channel, then everything you do. And interesting, perhaps we could add to this, what means could also mean in anything. Koil could mean in everything, or koil could mean in anything. Then in it the bracha of Hashem should rest, Hashem will bench you. In other words, like this. When I believe that it's my doing, so if it's my doing, so then I'm constantly, like we've spoken about many times, I'm second guessing. Maybe I shouldn't have done A, maybe I should have done B, C, D, Z. I don't have ever any rest. I don't have ever any joy. I'm always worried, maybe this is not the correct plan. But if my basic underlying thing is that I'm doing this as being connected to Hashem, I am searching out Hashem's bracha. So then, in anything that I will do, it doesn't make a difference if I do this type of kli or that type of kli. If I make such a type of vehicle, such a type of channel, such a type of vessel for Hashem's bracha, or another type of vessel for Hashem's bracha. Like I mentioned this analogy many times. If I am making the money, it doesn't make a difference if I have a pink purse, a black wallet, a green handbag. It doesn't make a difference. The money that you have will fit into the green handbag, the black purse, or the pink purse, or the black wallet. It makes no difference. In anything you do, Hashem's bracha will be shoyla. So it doesn't make a difference if Esther did fast or didn't fast, and she looked terrible before she went in, or she didn't look terrible. The main thing is she made the connection with Hashem. And this is the lesson that the Rebbe teaches for us, that we need to know that in every activity we do, whether it's on the macro that we're talking about approaching governments, which is not necessarily people here in the shir that have really that type of situation, unless they sometimes have problems. Maybe this person could sometimes have a problem with the IRS, or they're going to have other, legal issues, or whether they're dealing with their own lives, with their own health, with their own parnasa, with other things that are bothering. So I can have two approaches. I can focus on what type of lawyers I hire, or what type of business I'm doing, or what type of health regimen I'm doing, or my focus has to be completely different. My focus is, what connection am I making with Hashem? Then, if I'm making a connection with Hashem, then the money is in the bank. And it doesn't make a difference what type of keli, what type of wallet or purse, or even handbag I'm using. It's all the same to Hashem. Hashem can place his brachas, and Hashem should place his brachas in everything that we do. Stop over here today.